Hello and welcome to week 1 of the UNPL. My name is Jeremy. Welcome back to the channel. I'm the coach of the Springfield Starmies, and this week we have our battle against Mr. TJP in the Bundle Montreal. Before we get started, we had to do this one in postcomm because my video did not record correctly. I tried to recreate it. Big thanks to Golden Guy, Nick, for doing a recreation, and then when I was doing the editing for this, it really wasn't working out because of a couple crits and some damage rolls. So in the end, I ended up just using TJP's video, and I'm going to kind of do some post-com over that, talk about what I did and why I did it. So again, big thanks to TJP as well as Nick for sending me the raw video footage, and also Nick for spending time with me doing the recreation. So let's get into the battle. All right. So as we can see on the screen in front of us, I'm on the right. I decided to bring Darkrai with a Choice Scarf to be able to check non-Choice Scarf, Shaman Sky, and Iron Bundle. We can see here that TJP actually is Choice Scarf Iron Bundle, so that won't be as useful, but it is faster than Shaman Sky, which is nice. We went with a Wide Lens Maushold with Population Bomb because our opponent's Ghost type was Golurk, which did not come. He didn't bring any of his Terra Captains. He has 3 in Golurk, Alcremie, and Frostmoth. And his Steel type was Bisharp, and none of them came. So basically, unless he has a helmet on something, we can see that he has Helmet Dozo. The Maushold kind of goes in late game, and that was what we saw in prep when we were looking at the team. We're also bringing Spadef Pheasantipity as a check to Iron Bundle, and kind of Shaman Sky, especially if it doesn't click Air Slash, because we aren't 2-hit KO'd by Choice Specs Iron Bundle's Hydro Pump, and we can just basically get a pivot off on that, potentially get a Toxic Chain Poison. Pheasantipity is also our dedicated lead, because I think that it either gets a slow pivot off on a lot of Pokemon that are going to be switching out on us faster, like Iron Bundle, or we could potentially taunt Slowking Galar or get a Poison Alpha on Arcanine or Dondozo. So I really liked Pheasantipity lead, and I thought it worked well here into our opponent. We are also leftovers, by the way. Next up is going to be our Giratina-Origin, our Uber, with the Gracious Orb, rocking Shadow Sneak, Draco Meteor, Shadow Ball, kind of a mixed set. Our opponent's only ghost switch-in is going to be that Cyclizar, and if we switch, if he switches into Cyclizar when we click Shadow Ball, we can just immediately go for a Draco Meteor after that, because he also doesn't really have great switch-ins to Dragon-type moves, because he doesn't have a Fairy type. So Giratina just kind of looked amazing into my opponent, and I thought pretty much every time I got an opportunity to bring that in, I would. Second to last is going to be Rotom Heat. This checks our opponent's Shaman Sky pretty well, but it also, with a Pasho Berry, manages to be a lure to Iron Bundle. So I kind of thought that it would potentially be able to take that out, and if not, always be able to be a safe switch into the Shaman Sky. Last up, Terra Captain is going to be our Iron Hands with an Assault Vest. A lot of our opponent's team is specially offensive, so we really just thought that Assault Vest worked well here. But let's get into the battle. As I mentioned, I am doing a recreation here, and we do decide to lead with the Pheasantipity. And we're looking at what our opponent decides to lock in, and they do decide to lock in with that Iron Bundle start with the Choice Scarf. Again, big thanks to TJP and Golden Guy for the team support and for the video support. But hopefully you're enjoying these videos. I'm definitely excited for what's going on so far in UNPL. Some really nice people, some cool coaches, really strong players, and yeah, let's get into it. So we do see that he's going to lead with the Iron Bundle. We do lead with the Pheasantipity, and our plan is just going to be immediately click U-turn, because we pretty much know we're going to be slower than this. And we do see that he goes for a flip turn, which we do expect him to do. And then he decides to go into his Galarian Slowking, which is pretty much always a safe switch into Pheasantipity. We'll see this interaction happen later in the game, but for now we know that we can just U-turn on out, and we can pretty much go into something of our choice. We had a couple different options here. We could go into Giratina. He doesn't really have good switch-ins to that. What we decided to do the first turn is to go into Maushold because I want to scout for Rocky Helmet. Because he could theoretically be Rocky Helmet on Slowking, but his more likely Rocky Helmet holder is going to be that Dondozo. And we want to know whether or not we can click Population Bomb or not. So a mouse comes out, Maushold 3, and we just go for a U-turn because Dondozo is almost certainly coming in here, and we want to figure out what kind of set the Dondozo is. So we can see our opponent switches into Boost, ? And we go for U-turn. We will find out that Dondozo is Rocky Helmet, and we will switch out. But this really gives us a free turn to go into something that Dondozo can't really threaten, and we threaten a lot. So that's going to be our Uber. And you'll see that Giratina-Origin comes out, and we just start clicking Shadow Ball and trying to break stuff. I'm thinking, well, got lots of cool cheering faces on the side. Dondozo is a really, really big catfish. Poltergeist, Giratina-Origin. Centipede, I think. So our opponent decides to go to Cyclizar, predicting us to click Shadow Ball, which is a good play by them. Wheelie. Love the nicknames. Love the nicknames. We click Shadow Ball, he's immune, and he will go for Knockoff to try and get some chip down on us, which he is able to do. He will always be faster than us, of course. And he knocks us off, does about 30%, and we hit the Draco, and Cyclizar is gone, and Giratina picks up its first kill of the season. So great job, Cyclizar, sponging that attack. But now our opponent has no Ghost switch in, and that's going to kind of be a common theme for the rest of the game, that it's definitely a problem. So at this point, we see Shaman come in. We don't really know anything about the Shaman. It could be choice specs. We don't really want to take a Dazzling Gleam. So we make the decision to switch into Rotom Heat, which is pretty much always a good initial switch into this, because as we can see from what our opponent's options are, and really what Shaman Sky's options are in general, he doesn't really have anything to hit Rotom super hard. So we go into Tom Brady, we see the Dazzling Gleam is clicked, we see that it's not choice specs, and we know, all right, there's no way the Shaman's going to stay in. He's got to switch out. He's probably going to go back into Slowking, and we can just go for a Volt switch and go right back into Giratina and start doing our thing again, which is what we do. So I think at this point we're debating whether we want to click Overheat. On the chances that this stays in, we do figure that even if he is sub Shaman, that we will be able to break sub with Volt Switch, because we don't want this to get behind a sub. And once we calculate that it does break sub, we just decide to go for the Volt Switch, get on out of there against the incoming Galarian Slowking, and go right back into Giratina-Origin. And click Shadow Ball once again, because our opponent does not have a good answer. We do see that the Slowking goes for Chilly Reception. We know that it is Black Sludge. We know that it's not the Ghost Resist Berry. But either way, we know that the Shadow Ball is going to take it down, so that when it comes back in again, it's going to be maybe 70%. But it looks like a 2-hit KO the next time it comes in. Snow comes back in, and our opponent decides to go back into Shaman Sky. Looks like he was debating going into Arcanine. Iron Bundle might have also worked. I don't know the calcs exactly whether that would have taken us out, but he does decide to go to Shaman Sky, which is holding the Expert Belt. And this time he goes for Seed Flare, hoping to get the Spit F drop on us. We decide to stay in, knowing that we probably live everything. We know that it's not specs, so even if he is something like Expert Belt, we wouldn't have died to a Dazzling Gleam. And we click Draco, we take the down to about 10%, maybe 5% health, and now we click Shadow Sneak, because that will certainly take this out, and he may not expect us to have Shadow Sneak, but we are able to take out the Shaman Sky, and Giratina picks up yet another kill on the season in the snow. Doesn't look cold at all, doesn't look affected. At this point now, our opponent decides to go into Iron Bundle. We switch into Pheasantipity here, because Pheasantipity is always our safe switch into non-choice specs Iron Bundle. We still don't know at this point whether he's choice specs or not. All we've seen it do is click flip turn. But even if he is choice specs Hydro Pump, then we should live 2 unless he's modest. And our opponent does make a good play here, clicking Hydro Pump and predicting us to go out of Giratina into Pheasantipity. But if he had just clicked Ice Beam, then we would certainly have not been 2-hit KO'd by this. And either way, we can see that it's not choice specs. So that's going to be a safer cover for us. And our opponent kind of has to switch out here because he doesn't want to eat a Sludge Bomb, and then he knows that based on his set, Slowking Galar is always a safe answer to this Pheasantipity. We don't know that he has Psyshock. At this point, I was kind of thinking, well, if he has Sludge Bomb, Chilly Reception, Slack Off, and then maybe he doesn't have a Psychic move, or maybe his Psychic move is just Future Sight, we can potentially 1-versus-1 this, or at the very least prevent it from healing significantly. So we decide to go for Taunt to prevent him from either going for Chilly Reception or Slack Off. He just goes right for the Sludge Bomb. Good play by them. And now is when I decide, well, if he doesn't have a Psychic move, we can 1-versus-1 this, or at least be super, super annoying for a while. So we click Sludge Bomb again. This was probably a misplay. We do see that because he has Psyshock, it's going to take us down extremely low. And this kind of leaves us a little bit vulnerable to Choice Scarf, Iron Bundle in the late game, because this was like our answer to Iron Bundle. But at the same time, it's good information. We now know pretty much what this thing's full set is. We can predict that he does have Slack Off. So we go for U-turn. Slowking is about half. And we go back into Giratina because we know that unless the Slowking has Ice Beam, there's not too much that it can do to us, and then we will definitely be able to get it super, super low with Shadow Ball, if not take it out altogether. Slowking goes for Sludge Bomb. He does not get the poison. He also has now no longer taunted, but he's in a position where Shadow Ball will pretty much take him out. And this is where we wanted to be by preventing him from recovering when we click Taunt with Pheasantipity and just getting that little bit of chip damage with U-turn and with Sludge Bomb. So Slowking is now gone, which is super nice. Slowking is always a really, really annoying pivot to deal with. And he still has no Shadow Ball switch in. But he decides to go into Arcanine. And at this point, I think we're thinking to ourselves, well, if this Arcanine doesn't have Morning Sun, then we're in a position where Shadow Ball's just going to easily 2 or 3 KO this. And our Giratina is just here to kind of show up and break. So we decide to go for Shadow Ball. We can see it does round a third. So it's going to be a pretty easy 3-hit KO here at this point, a 2-hit KO if he's not Morning Sun. So there wasn't really any reason for us to not just keep clicking Shadow Ball. We do get burned, which is kind of annoying because it means that this Giratina is now on a timer, and if he is Morning Sun, then we probably won't win this one-on-one interaction. But again, if he is not Morning Sun, we should take it out here. So we just go for it again, scouting out the set a little bit in exchange for a little bit of burn chip damage if he ends up being Morning Sun. So yeah, that's what we click. We see that the Arcanine is indeed Morning Sun, so we know that long term we will not be able to 1-versus-1 this Arcanine, but we get a nice Spadef drop there, which is extremely fortunate, and kind of puts him in a position where he can't really beat this overall, because our Shadow Balls are now going to be doing about half, and keeping the Arcanine low is super important for us, because once the Arcanine is around half, all sorts of stuff can take it out, like Darkrai, Maushold can definitely easily take it out from half. So at this point, the name of the game is to just keep the Arcanine low, and if we give up our Giratina in the process, that's okay. But we can see that definitely looks like a 2-hit KO due to that special defense drop. And at this point, our opponent decides we really need to be able to preserve this Arcanine, and decides to go into Dondozo to remove the special defense drop. But because Giratina is here to just be able to break things, we stay in and we click Shadow Ball again. And when the Dondozo comes in, we can see that between the little bit of chip damage that it took from Maushold and the Shadow Ball damage, that 100% looks like a 2-hit KO. So we once again will be able to click Shadow Ball and get a free kill on something. Then we actually click Draco here to secure the kill. Yeah, and Giratina is able to pick up another one on Dondozo. So it's managed to pretty much do all of the damage in our team so far, leaving our opponent with Arcanine and Scarf Iron Bundle, which is fantastic. The Giratina is, of course, on a timer, only has a couple of turns left until it is fainting from burn, and at this point it's -2, given it took a Draco. So we can see our opponent decides to go back into Arcanine because he knows that we are at -2, and goes for a Morning Sun because he knows that we can't take him out at this point. We decide to switch out to preserve our Giratina and go directly into Maushold on what we expect to be a Morning Sun, which we do see. And at this point, we know that Population Bomb, based on the calcs of what Giratina was doing to this, should take out the Arcanine if we are able to get 10 hits. We do get 1 crit, which is fortunate. We get 2 crits, actually. I think that probably would have taken him out either way because it would have hit twice more, but we are able to take out the Arcanine with the Maushold. Fantastic. Love to see Mouse putting in work. And our opponent's last Pokemon is Iron Bundle. We know that because he is not Choice Specs that he will not be able to take us out with Hydro Pump. And we go for Population Bomb. And again, as long as we land a bunch of hits on the Iron Bundle, we will be able to take it out with Maushold, which we are able to. So Maushold really putting in the work late game, Giratina putting in the work early game, and we're able to take a nice win in week 1 over Mr. TJP. So I'm enjoying how the team's working so far. And again, thanks to TJP, thanks to Nick for the recreation, and we will be back for next week. So thank you very much, everybody, and goodbye.